There is gold sitting in the ground right now that Tony Beets already walked past once. Gold that got missed. Gold that slipped through the operation the first time around and has been sitting there ever since waiting. And Tony Beets is not the kind of man who leaves gold in the ground. So this Friday, April 3rd, 2026, Tony goes back into the Hester cut, hunting for every ounce that got left behind the first time. And if you think going back for missed gold sounds like a desperate move, you do not know Tony Beets. Because in the Yukon, knowing where the missed gold is and having the operation to go get it is not desperation. That is experience. That is strategy. That is the move of a man who has been doing this long enough to know that sometimes the best gold you ever find is the gold you already passed. This is Gold Rush Season 16, Episode 20, Dig Deep, or Cash Out, airing this Friday, April 3rd, 2026. And this episode is setting up to be one of the most intense of the entire season. I am Oliver Stone. Welcome back to the channel. Let us get into everything. Before we go deep on the Hester cut, I want you to understand the significance of what Tony is actually doing here. Going back into ground you have already mined is a decision that carries real risk. It means you are committing equipment, crew time, and operational resources to a piece of ground that already had its first pass. And first passes are supposed to get the gold. That is the whole point of the operation. Run the material, catch the gold, move on. So when Tony decides to go back into the Hester cut, he is making a statement. He is saying the first pass left something behind. He is saying there are ounces sitting in that cut that did not make it onto the scale the first time around. And he is saying those ounces are worth going back for. Now, Tony Beets does not make that call without a reason. Tony has been reading Yukon ground long enough to know when a cut has been fully worked and when it has not. And the Hester cut apparently has not. Which means somewhere in that ground there is lost gold. Gold that missed the wash plant. Gold that got bypassed in the processing. Gold that is just sitting there waiting for someone with the experience to know it is there and the operation to go get it. Tony is that someone. And this Friday he goes hunting. Think about what hunting for missed gold actually demands from a mining operation. You are not going into fresh ground where the gold distribution is unknown. You are going back into work ground where you have to read what the first pass left behind and figure out where the concentrations are. That requires a different kind of instinct than standard mining. It requires Tony to think like a detective, looking at the ground, reading the material, understanding where gold settles and why, and building a picture of what got missed and where it went. This is Tony Beets operating at the highest level of his experience. Not just pushing material, not just running a wash plant, actually hunting, actually applying decades of knowledge to find gold that an entire operation already went over and missed. That is the Hester cut story, and it is one of the most compelling Tony Beets moments Season 16 has given us. Now here is what makes the Hester cut hunt even more significant in the context of where Tony's season stands. Tony already crossed 6,600s this season, over his 6,500s target. So going back into the Hester cut is not a survival move. Tony is not hunting missed gold because he is behind on his numbers and desperate to catch up. He is hunting missed gold because there is gold there, and leaving it in the ground goes against everything Tony Beets stands for as a miner. Every ounce in the Hester cut that Tony recovers this Friday is an ounce on top of an already successful season. It is Tony squeezing every last drop out of Season 16, because that is what Tony does. He does not coast. He does not put his feet up because the target is hit. He goes back into the Hester cut and he hunts. Because the gold does not stop being gold just because a season is technically won. And the title of this episode, Dig Deep or Cash Out, sits right on top of that Hester cut decision in a way that is almost too perfect. Dig deep or cash out is the choice every miner faces at the end of a season. Do you push harder, go deeper, commit more resources and more effort to squeeze every last ounce out of the ground? Or do you look at what you have, call it a season, and cash out? Tony's answer to that question is written all over the Hester cut. Tony is not cashing out. Tony is digging deeper, literally going back into ground he already worked to find what he missed the first time. That is the dig deep choice made physical. That is Tony Beets refusing to cash out while there is still gold in the Yukon with his name on it. Now let us shift to Ness, because his storyline in episode 20 is one that the Gold Rush community has been waiting on all season. Rick returns to Vegas and gets a proposition from Parker Schnabel. Read that again. Ness, who stepped away from Gold Rush mining to deal with personal challenges, is back in Vegas, and Parker Schnabel is bringing him a proposition. Now I want you to think about what a proposition from Parker to Rick actually means in the context of Season 16. Parker does not make casual offers. Parker Schnabel is one of the most successful and most competitive miners in Gold Rush history. When Parker sits across from someone and puts a proposition on the table, it is because he has thought about it, calculated the upside, and decided this move makes sense for his operation. So, what is Parker offering Rick? Is it a return to mining? Is it a partnership? Is it something that brings Rick back into the Gold Rush world in a capacity that changes both of their seasons going forward? We do not know exactly what the proposition is yet, but the fact that it is happening in Vegas, away from the Yukon, away from the mines, in the middle of Season 16, makes it feel like something bigger than a casual conversation between two miners who know each other. This is a meeting that means something. And how Rick responds to Parker's proposition is going to be one of the most talked about moments in this episode. Ness stepping back from mining was one of the most human stories Gold Rush has ever told. Because it was not about gold or equipment or production numbers. It was about a person reaching a point where the personal cost of the lifestyle was more than the reward of the gold. And Rick being honest enough to step back, to say I need to step away from this, earned him a kind of respect from this community that goes beyond anything his mining numbers ever produced. So seeing Rick back in Vegas, sitting across from Parker, listening to a proposition, that moment lands differently than any mining scene in this episode. Because it is Rick at a crossroads, and the choice he makes in that Vegas meeting is going to define where his story goes in the final stretch of Season 16 and potentially beyond it. Now, Parker, on top of the Rick proposition, is also dealing with one of the worst things that can happen to a mining operation at the worst possible time. Parker's crew loses a truck. Not a minor breakdown. Not a quick repair. They lose a truck. And in a gold mining operation, a truck is not optional equipment. Trucks move material from the dig site to the wash plant. Without trucks moving material, the whole system backs up. The excavator is digging, but the material has nowhere to go. The wash plant is running, but there's nothing coming into process. Everything downstream of the missing truck comes to a grinding halt. And Parker losing a truck at this point in Season 16, when the season is in its final stretch, when every day of production matters, when there is no time to absorb a significant equipment loss, is the kind of setback that can unravel a season that was already under pressure. Think about the position Parker is in right now. He is in Vegas putting a proposition to Rick, while his crew back at the mine is dealing with a lost truck. Two completely different crises happening at the same time in two completely different locations. Parker cannot be in both places. He cannot manage the Rick conversation and the truck situation simultaneously from up close. He has to trust his crew to handle the equipment problem while he handles the business meeting. And in Gold Rush, trusting your crew to solve a major equipment crisis without you standing over it is always a risk. The truck loss while Parker is away is going to test his team in a way that normal production days never do. And how they respond, whether they solve it fast or whether it snowballs into something bigger, is the Parker crew storyline to watch this Friday. The title Dig Deep or Cash Out applies to Parker just as much as it applies to Tony in this episode. Tony is digging deep in the Hester cut, but Parker is being forced to answer that same question from a different angle. With a truck gone and a proposition on the table in Vegas, Parker's version of Dig Deep or Cash Out is about whether he can hold his season together on two fronts at once. Does he have enough left in the tank and enough trust in his crew to manage both? Or does the truck loss at the wrong moment and the distraction of the Rick proposition become the thing that cost Parker the closing stretch of season 16? That is Parker's version of the episode title, and it is a genuinely tense one. When you sit down this Friday, April 3rd, here is exactly what Oliver Stone wants you watching for. Watch Tony in the Hester cut from the moment the operation starts. Watch how Tony reads the ground, where he positions the equipment, what he is looking for, how he communicates to his crew what he believes is down there. This is Tony Beets hunting, and you are going to see a version of him that is different from standard production mining. It's minds. More focused. More precise. More instinct-driven. That is the Tony to watch this Friday. Watch the moment Tony's team hits something in the Hester cut. Whether it is a rich pocket of missed gold or a disappointing result, that moment and Tony's reaction to it is the emotional peak of his storyline this episode. Because the Hester cut is a bet. Tony is betting his experience and his instinct against the ground. And finding out whether that bet pays off is everything. Watch Rick in Vegas when Parker puts the proposition on the table. Watch Rick's face before he responds. Because that split second, the moment Rick hears what Parker is offering and processes it before he says a word, that is the most honest moment in the entire Rick storyline. Whatever is happening behind Rick's eyes in that moment tells you where his head is, where his heart is, and whether he is ready to come back. And watch Parker's crew deal with the truck loss without Parker there to manage it. Watch who steps up. Watch how they communicate the problem. Watch whether the team holds together under pressure or whether the absence of Parker creates a vacuum that makes the situation worse than it needs to be. This is Gold Rush Season 16, Episode 20, Dig Deep or Cash Out, this Friday, April 3rd, 2026. Tony hunts lost gold in the Hester cut. Rick sits across from Parker in Vegas, and here's a proposition that could change everything. And Parker's crew loses a truck at the absolute worst time. Dig deep or cash out. Every miner on this show is answering that question this Friday in their own way. And we are going to be right here watching every second of it. Drop in the comments right now, do you think Tony finds significant missed gold in the Hester cut, or does the ground come up short? And what do you think Parker's proposition to Rick actually is? Is Rick coming back to mining, or is this something completely different? Oliver Stone wants to hear from the Gold Rush family before Friday night. Hit that like button if this breakdown gave you everything you needed. Subscribe if you are not already on the team. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a breakdown or recap. And Oliver Stone will see you Friday night with the full episode 20 reaction the moment it airs. Tony hunts lost gold in the Hester cut. The Yukon does not give up its gold easy. But Tony Beets does not give up easy either. See you Friday.